Have you ever opened an original Japanese manga and wondered what those characters are doing there? Well, this is the video for you, because I will try to explain the basics of the Japanese writing system, specifically in reference to manga. Are you ready? Let's go! Ikuze! Okay, now most of you probably read your manga in English or translate it into your native language. But perhaps here and there an editor has forgotten to erase a Japanese character, or maybe you've checked out an original manga completely written in Japanese and you're wondering what all those characters mean, how the writing system works. Well, with this video I'm going to try to give you a brief explanation of how the Japanese writing system works, specifically in reference to manga. Now, with this video, you're not going to be able to fluently read a Japanese manga or any other Japanese text for that matter, but you'll have a basic understanding, I hope, of how the Japanese writing system works. Now, there are different character sets in Japanese, and the basic two ones are kana on the one hand, which are relatively simple characters, phonetic characters, and kanji. Kanji are more complex characters and they carry a certain meaning. They have a certain meaning embedded in them. The kana has two subsets, Hiragana and Katakana. So now we're going to have a look at all three of these sets, kanji, Hiragana, and Katakana, and what's peculiar about them. Now, first up, we have kanji. Now, as I said, kanji carry a certain meaning, and they're actually derived from Chinese Hanji characters, right? So the Japanese actually created their writing system based on classical Chinese. The oldest texts in Japan are actually written in classical Chinese, right? And so these characters come from there, and they have a certain meaning embedded in them. In a sense, they are ideograms. They convey a certain concept or message, right? So, for example, you see kanji written here. The last character, the second character, ji, actually means letter, right? So kanji, right, letters. What's also peculiar about them is they can have different pronunciations. Not necessarily always, but certain kanji, many kanji actually, have various ways you can pronounce them, right? So I'll give a simple example. I take, for example, the character den, which means electricity, and the character wa, which means conversation or to talk, right? I put them together, I get a new word, denwa, and denwa means telephone. So a conversation carried over electricity. It makes sense. Usually there's a certain logic behind that. The second character, wa, can actually also be pronounced hanasu, for example. So kanji can have various pronunciations, but carry a certain specific meaning to that character. They're usually used for nouns, the stems of verbs, or the stems of adjectives and adverbs. Next up we have hiragana. Now hiragana are more simple characters, right? And they are phonetic, so they don't carry a certain meaning in them. Like here we have hiragana written on the screen. Now each character is just represents a sound. It's just a sound. Like he is just a sound. He, there's no meaning attached to that character in particular. They're also used for inflections. As I said, kanji are used as the stem of verbs, adjectives, adverbs, while hiragana is then used to create inflections of those verbs and adjectives, turning, for example, the present tense into past tense, turning a positive into a negative, right? They're also used as prepositions. For example, making a possessive with the hiragana no, towards, to, into, over, things like that are usually expressed with hiragana. Specific usage is when hiragana are used as furigana. Now, furigana is a kind of small print that is printed in a smaller case above kanji to help the reader with the pronunciation of those kanji, because as I said, kanji can have different pronunciations, right? And it's not always clear which pronunciation should be used, right? In most cases, people know, of course, how they should pronounce it. But there are certain specific cases, for example, with names or surnames, where it can be pronounced in different ways. There, furigana can be used to help the reader with how to read the kanji. In manga, furigana is very often used because manga authors usually aim at a certain audience. That audience, depending on the age they are, has already mastered a lot of kanji in school or not yet. And in order to broaden his potential audience, the author will usually include furigana on top of certain kanji, because that way younger readers who are also part of his target audience will be able to understand or read that kanji, will be able to read the manga. And of course, it's also very helpful for people who study Japanese because, well, they usually don't know that many kanji yet. And then thanks to the furigana, maybe they're able to read them. But the main reason why they do that is actually because they have a certain range of target audience. And the more younger people are included in there, the more important it is to tell them how they should pronounce or read certain kanji, because maybe they haven't mastered them yet. Finally, we have katakana, very similar to hiragana, because they are also phonetic. There's no meaning attached to these characters. So as you see here, katakana is just that pronunciation, that sound. There's no meaning attached to it, or I mean to the character individually. Now these, in difference with the hiragana, these are usually used as loan words or for loan words. For example, computer. Computer is a loan word. It comes from the English computer. Japanese incorporated the word into the Japanese language when they were introduced to computers. And they will look for the sound that is closest to the original word in Japanese. So that turned into computer. That will be written in katakana as it comes from a foreign word. They can also be used, and especially in manga, this is the case for emphasis. Sometimes katakana is used for a word that is being yelled out, for example, or a word where emphasis is put on. English books or comics or American books and comics will, for example, rather use bold type, or will print the word in all caps to put emphasis on the word. In Japanese, they will often use katakana to the same effect. It can also be used sometimes to indicate that the character in the manga who is talking is speaking in a very unnatural way. For example, if you have a manga where the cast is all Japanese, right? And there's a foreigner that joins the conversation and his Japanese is not so fluent, well, they will often write his Japanese purely in katakana, even though he speaks Japanese. And the reason why they do that is to show that he has a very foreign accent. Another usage, for example, could be with cyborgs and robots. If the author wants to show that the character is speaking in a very, how should I say, robotic way, a very stiff way, an unnatural way, he will often also use katakana. Right, something like that. For example, you see in American comics when they put more space between the letters, or they put dashes between letters to show that the character speaks in a very unnatural way. Japanese will do that with katakana. And they can also be used as furigana, the same as hiragana, but this is much less often the case, right? Usually when you have kanji, those are native Japanese words, native Japanese characters, you put the correct pronunciation on top of it, you will use hiragana, right? Because katakana is more aimed towards loan words, towards foreign words. But sometimes, and especially for manga, an author writes something in kanji, but he wants the reader to pronounce it in a different way. And in that case, if the different pronunciation that he's aiming for is a foreign pronunciation, then he might use katakana as furigana. We'll see an example of that later on. Okay, so now we've covered the basic sets of characters in the writing system, and we're going to put it all together in one example now. Okay, we have the word manga. Now imagine I'm a manga author and I aim my manga specifically at a very young audience. I know virtually none of them have studied kanji so far, or very little kanji, so I'm going to write it in hiragana. I'm not going to use kanji, it's pointless, right? So there you have it, manga written in hiragana. If in the same manga I talk about manga but the foreign variety, American comics for example, I might use the word comic, right? Because here I talk about American comics. It's a loan word, so it's written in katakana, and I look for the pronunciation that is as close as possible to the original word. So here it is comic. Imagine I'm the same author and I write a story for a broader audience or a more mature audience. I have more readers that have already mastered kanji. I have older readers, maybe high school students, maybe adults, right? So there I'm going to use the kanji. As we see here on the screen at the left bottom, manga written in kanji. Just to be sure, I can add furigana on top of it. So I write in hiragana manga in smaller print to help the readers who haven't mastered that kanji yet how to pronounce it. That way I broaden my range of potential audience as an author. Imagine I write for a mature audience and I want to use the kanji for manga, but I want to talk about, what I'm actually talking about is American comics. So in that case, as a stylistic choice, for example, this is not normal Japanese, but this is more a stylistic choice by the author, I would write the kanji manga, but I would write furigana on top of it in katakana comic. This is not the normal pronunciation of these kanji. That's why the furigana is written in katakana, and I use it more as a stylistic choice because those kanji convey a certain idea which matches with comics, right? Manga, comics, it's just different cultures' variation of the same medium. And since I'm talking about the westernized version, I write comic as the furigana in katakana on top of these kanji. Now here we have 4 case studies where you use the different character sets. Now we're going to have a look at that in practice. We're going to have a look at a couple of manga titles and how authors go about it with these various types of character sets. Okay, the first one is One Piece. Famous, of course, well loved around the world. Now the logo itself is written in English, One Piece, right? The word itself is also English, One Piece. Now the author originally writes his manga for his Japanese audience, so he needs to tell them how they should pronounce the title, which is why, in kind of like a furigana way, at the top he wrote it in katakana. And he chose the closest possible Japanese pronunciation to the original English word. So here we have One Piece, which is the closest you can get in Japanese language to One Piece. Another example in the same sense is Death Note. Death Note, again, an English word, and the author helps his audience with the pronunciation by writing in katakana, because it's a foreign word, how to pronounce it. Again, here the author went for the closest possible Japanese pronunciation for the word, which is Death Note. A final example here is bleach, also well known. Bleach is an English word again, and here as well the author wrote in katakana bleachy, which is the closest you can get in Japanese pronunciation to that English word. So these are all three examples of a similar situation where you have an English word as the title, and the author tells his or her audience how to read that title exactly in Japanese. Another type of title here we have a title in kanji, so we don't have a foreign word, we have a native Japanese word. Shingeki no Kyojin, Attack on Titan. So the characters are pronounced in their native pronunciation. Shingeki, attack, no, possessive, Kyojin means giant. So the attack titan, the attacking titan, I would translate it. Here the author chose for an English translation that is written under it as attack on titan. But here we have an example of native kanji use of Japanese characters for a title, where he also writes the English variant under it. So it's kind of like the opposite this time. Hokuto no Ken, one of my favorite manga of all time, written in Japanese kanji, and the pronunciation matches perfectly with the characters. So you have Hokuto, which is the Big Dipper or the North Star. No, possessive. Ken means fist. So literally Fist of the North Star, which is also the English name of this manga. Here you see there's no furigana written on top of the kanji. Why? Because the author is aiming at a mature audience. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of blood and gore. People who know the series will testify to that in this manga. It's not aimed at little children. So this is why he writes a lot of kanji in his manga and relatively little furigana, because, well, if you have a mature audience, they're supposed to be able to read those kanji. A last example now, also one of my favorites, by the way. Now here we have a title written in kanji as well, right? And if I would read those kanji just the way I see them at face value, I would read it as Sei Toshi Seiya. So Sei, first kanji, means holy. The second two kanji, Toshi, mean fighter or warrior. And then the last two, Seiya, doesn't make sense. It's not an existing word. The first one, Sei or Hoshi, means star. And the second one, Ya, means arrow, star arrow. But I know that Seiya is the name of the main character of the story here. So, okay, we're putting that aside as a character name. And then you get Holy Warrior Seiya. So that would be the pronunciation at face value if I see these kanji. But the author tells us that we should read it differently. As you can see, in small print, the author put some furigana on top of the title in katakana, meaning he wants us to read these kanji in a different way, in a foreign way, namely Saint Seiya, which also matches well. You still have the word Seiya, so the main character's name is in it, and Saint, Holy Warrior, that kind of has a similar connotation here. Since this is a manga based on Greek mythology, I think the word matches really well, and the saints of Athena are the holy warriors that protect the goddess Athena. So here we have another example then where the author uses kanji but tells the reader that he or she needs to pronounce it in a different way. So I hope these examples could help you a little bit in understanding how the Japanese writing system works, how complex it can be at times, but how fun it can also be to dissect and to study these things. Now, if you are interested in learning more about this and maybe starting to study Hiragana and Katakana, which is usually what students start with, there are some affiliate links here below in the video, under the video. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but it really helps the channel if you purchase through the links. as we get a little percentage from Amazon then. So if you are interested, I have looked up a couple of interesting resources for you. Just have a look at it. If you see something you like and you make a purchase, you help the channel as well. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed my explanation so far. The terminology I used here, Hiragana, Katakana, Kanji, will often come back in my other videos as I explain various things about various manga. So if ever you need a short refresher, just watch this video. Hopefully it was helpful to you, and I see you guys in the next one. Take care, Jane, bye. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, tap the notification bell and sound off in the comments. And hey, while you're here, why not check out another video?